Virtual reality is here, and the demand for PC-based virtual reality says it's time to get into the game.
After a few ill-fated attempts in the 1980s and 90s, the age of virtual reality is finally upon us. Oculus has finally released its long-awaited Rift, and both HTC and Sony are expected to follow up with the release of the Vive and PlayStation VR later in 2016. It's too early to say if VR will truly take off and be a commercial success, but it's undebatable that the first generation of headsets delivered to some extent on the buzzword promises of presence and immersion. While gamers and developers are excited to get their hands on the device, the real challenge remains to convince the mass market. The release of those new devices has marketers scratching their heads when asked the question, how do you sell VR without experiencing it?
Seven-function, remote-control color television, so beautiful it enhances any decor.
Having to sell a new technology with the previous one is not a new issue. Ask TV manufacturers. They've been dealing with that issue for decades. Demonstrating a superior image quality has proven tricky when all you're seeing is your same old TV.
Hey, look! It's the Grand Canyon!
Whether it's for demonstrating the benefits of color, HD, LED, or 3D technology, TV manufacturers have progressively moved away from trying to emulate the picture quality to producing experiences and using far-fetched metaphors to imply vibrant colors and lifelike 3D.
But game console manufacturers have also faced the issue for years.
It came from the third dimension.
Back in 1995, Nintendo marketed and released the Virtual Boy, a head-mounted display capable of playing games in gradients of red and black with stereoscopic 3D effects. While being a precursor to VR headsets, the Virtual Boy failed commercially despite great promises of
A 3D game for a 3D world.
Nintendo would come back to innovative consoles, this time in much more successful fashion, in 2006. With the Wii, Nintendo turned the focus from the games to the players. In early concept material and throughout the lifespan of the Wii, Nintendo paid close attention to showing the players use the game to communicate effectively the Wii's motion controls. It was also an efficient way of showing a more diverse audience in comparison to the teenage male-focused marketing efforts from Sony and Microsoft. Following the Wii's success, Sony and Microsoft not only responded to the Wii by releasing their own motion gaming hardware, but by also using Nintendo's user-centric imagery in their ads. Despite the commercial failure of the Virtual Boy, Nintendo came back to stereoscopic 3D-capable consoles 16 years later. In 2011, Nintendo released the Nintendo 3DS. To promote the 3DS and communicate its new features, Nintendo used once again the player-focused imagery it had introduced with the Wii. Only this time, visual tricks and special effects were added to imply the sense of depth the game system could offer. The 3DS did not prove to be as successful as the DS. A high retail price at launch, coupled with health concerns, resulted in slow sales for the 3DS in the first months following its release. Another reason was that the 3D feature was hard to communicate. You had to try it to get it. The Wii U reused a lot of the imagery and communication principles used to promote the original Wii by putting the focus on the players in its promotional videos. Unfortunately, and to this day, Nintendo has failed to communicate effectively what made the Wii U special. Which leads us now to VR. How are head-mounted display manufacturers promoting it? Well, so far each one has its own idea of how to sell the product and the experience. Oculus has taken most of its inspiration from Microsoft's marketing of the Xbox One. The Rift's marketing efforts focus on 2 points: hardware and content. To communicate this, the ads for the Rift feature the device, with 3D renders of the head-mounted display spinning on monochrome backgrounds, and games with snippets of the software compatible. Sony has put the focus on the player reactions and also content. In their promotional material for PlayStation VR, Sony has reused some of the visual tricks and overlay techniques used to promote the PlayStation Move. To alleviate the impression of isolation the device may convey, Sony shows actors wearing transparent CG versions of the mask in order for the audience to see the player reactions. In the Vives ads, Valve and HTC have decided to go down the metaphoric route by placing players in dreamy and outlandish landscapes. Here, the focus is trying to communicate the experience. But video ads are not the only way to sell virtual reality, and most likely not the most effective. Here are 3 ways VR hardware and software is or could be promoted with in the future. YouTubers will have a big part to play. Such as for gaming, Let's Players can let their audiences know how VR works. Since nothing beats trying out the real thing, on a more local level, testimonies of people having tried the device are sure to convert efficiently many to the tech. Nothing beats the real thing, but smartphones and tablets, devices most people already own, can emulate partially what VR is about. Take Facebook's 360 videos or Google Cardboard. With these, hardware and software creators can share bite-sized experiences that emulate partially the real deal. Much to the hardware marketers' dislike, VR reaction videos have collected much more views than professional trailers, and are mainly responsible for the buzz surrounding VR. Whether it's reaction videos of amazement or absolute dread, it seems to be that genuine reactions caught on shaky phone cameras have driven more interest for the new tech than professional models and actors pretending to be using the devices. To go big, virtual reality will need to convert beyond the tech-savvy and gamers with deep pockets. There's no debating that VR could change the way we consume our media. But for it to stay, VR tech will have to convince the mass market of its potential and possibilities.